Hello everybody, Dark Skeleton here, and in this video we're going to be going into 3 sets of card reviews from Danny NiklasJensen and ORipperO for his 3rd set. So, going straight into these cards, let's take a look. And of course, as always, these card reviews are done without having seen the cards first, so basically this stuff is all new to me as it is new to you. So first up, crazy card by the looks of it. Control Sequence. 6 mana rogue card. Discard your hand, draw 10 cards. Alright. So that would be like an alternative to Sprint, but much more dramatic. Couple things come to mind. A, if you play this, you're going to mill the next card unless you play another card on the back of it, and maybe that's not so bad. But yeah, you probably play another card with the other 4 mana anyway, so it's not a huge deal. And then you just draw into your 10th card on the following turn. If you are playing pretty aggressively, like you have an aggro rogue deck or something like that, and you draw into this with 1 or 2 cards in your hand, this is absolutely insane. Holy crap, like you gain 8 cards for 6 mana. Sure, you discard a couple, but I mean, in non-control matchups, having every card get value isn't always necessary. So that's actually freaking broken. Yeah, I mean, just think about it. You have 2 cards in hand. Even if you have like 4 cards in hand, you still draw 6. You wouldn't play it in a super control deck, but if this card was in the game, Aggro Rogue would probably be one of the best decks out there, I think. It's like Divine Favor, but it's better than Divine Favor. And Divine Favor is the card that makes aggro paladin decks almost be a thing. Interesting concept, but very imbalanced, oh man. Okay, next up, Crystal Shieldmaiden. 3 mana, 2/3. Battlecry, give adjacent minions Divine Shield. Alright, so it's sort of like a Sun Fury Protector, but plus 1 mana, which is fair because Divine Shield is better than Taunt 9 out of 10 times. And you're basically paying 3 mana for a 2 mana minion. You could kind of compare it to Argent Protector, which gives 1 minion a Divine Shield. This gets plus 1 health, plus 1 Divine Shield, plus 1 mana. I think overall that's probably pretty balanced, I kind of want to say. I don't think this is super OP, because having 2 extra minions isn't the easiest thing to do. And you'd probably be playing this in more of an aggressive paladin deck. The base stats aren't really good, so you can't afford to just have this clunking up your hand where you don't have anything to play it with. So in the theory that it's an aggro paladin, you could very much compare it to a Flame Tongue Totem. And yeah, I think Divine Shield would be fair, because Flame Tongue Totem gives plus 2 attack. I would even say that's better. This is a real minion, and that's just a totem. But overall, I think this would be a nice addition to the game. I kind of like the concept. That said, hopefully it wouldn't be too broken in control decks, because, I mean, if you have that situation where you have, like, 2 5 mana or 6 drops and you play this on the back of it, you'd get some seriously good trades in, but Argent Protector isn't a thing in control decks, so this probably wouldn't be either. Okay, Darren Guard, 1 mana, 1/1, Deathrattle, add a random 2-cost minion to your hand. So that's good for a couple reasons. 1, it's value. 2, if you manage to kill this off after playing it on your turn 1, then you have your turn 2 already set up to, for you. So you could probably consider playing this in control decks or something like that. That said, is a 2-cost minion going to be good enough? Would it not be better to just play a deck that has good 2-drops? Would you really put a 1-drop in a control deck? I mean, you could say the Babbling Book is in all the mage decks, and that gives you a random spell, which could be anything from an Arcane Blast to a Flame Strike. But probably the Babbling Book gets you more value than this card does, because 2-cost minions tend to suck, and it's random too, remember, it's not even class specific. So whether that's good or not would have to be tested, but not a bad concept. Expose Weakness. 1 mana, choose a minion, it now takes double damage. Kinda like Execute, in a way. So let me think about that. Let's say you have a Tomb Pillager on the board, and your opponent plays a big minion like a Ysera, so Tomb Pillager runs in, does 10 damage, because of Exposed Weakness. So it almost kills a Ysera, so it's kind of like an Execute, yeah. But honestly, it's probably worse than a Cold Blood, because if you think about it, most minions don't have more than 8 HP. Wouldn't it just be better to Cold Blood a 4 attack minion or something like that than it would be to actually bother playing Exposed Weakness? Maybe you could play it in some kind of weird Reno Rogue or something like that that runs both spells just because. Concept's not too bad though, but I'm not sure it's good in practice. Okay, Kil Jaeden. 6 mana, 12/12. Your opponent's hero is immune, cannot be silenced. Okay. That's interesting. So you can't kill your opponent. You can't even damage your opponent. What happens if your opponent's playing Freeze Mage and you play Kil Jaeden? You just lose the game? Because as long as your opponent doesn't play minions, this can't really be killed unless you're going to destroy your own Kil Jaeden. Which means if it's a control warrior, a fatigue priest, or anything like that, you play Kil Jaeden and you just instantly lose the game. And aggro decks would pretty much just ignore it, right? It's hard to evaluate if this card is good or horrible. Like, theoretically, you could play it against an aggro deck. You use it to clean up your opponent's minions for a really long time. And you're not worried about dealing damage to your opponent's face because it's all about stabilization. Maybe this card's good for stabilization, but if your opponent is playing a deck that can just ignore it because it doesn't need to stabilize, you just lose. So, not sure it's good. It's definitely a swingy card. Very different. It also dies instantly to Demonic Pact. That's kind of funny. Yeah. Not sure what to make of it. Okay, Knight of Retribution, 3 mana, 3/4, Paladin, minion. Deathrattle, silence a random enemy minion. Okay, so a 3/4 for 3 that basically has a Spellbreaker's effect, but random. I mean, it would be good at countering like a Sylvanas or a Cairn Bloodhoof, for sure. And those cards are played quite a bit, so maybe that's not bad. Other decks like Hunters, they have Savannah Highmanes. I mean, there's quite a few good silence targets in the game at the moment still. And, yeah, Spellbreaker and Ironbeak Owl aren't really things. I think this could see some play. In control versus control matchups, there's got to be at least one good target this could run into, but the thing is, if you play Knight of Retribution, they're never going to play a Sylvanas into it. So you could use it to hold off the Sylvanas, but are you going to play this into a Sylvanas? They'd probably just flood their board with extra minions to basically make the effect pointless. But a 3 mana 3/4 is still pretty solid on the back of that. So maybe it's playable. I mean, it's definitely playable, but maybe it's good. Maybe it's on the borderline of being good, but I kind of like the concept. Not totally sure if silence belongs in Paladin, but interesting. 6 mana Lady Rivendale. So it's the opposite of Baron Rivendale. Deathrattles don't trigger. 7/6, 6 mana. So that could basically counter a Sylvanas. It could counter a Cairn Bloodhoof. It would be pretty good against this, a N'Zoth deck. I think if a minion is a Deathrattle minion, it still comes back, even if the Deathrattle didn't trigger with N'Zoth. You could also use it with your own minions, though. Like, if you have a Deathlord and you play this, they don't get a free minion, and you just have a 3 mana 2/8 taunt. What else? Like, if you have cards like Unstable Ghoul, I mean, I'm bringing back Naxxramas cards as examples here. But you can make it so that, hey, maybe you don't want to blow up the board that turn, so you play Lady Rivendale, something like that. It's an interesting concept, and I'm sure it could be used somewhere. Kind of like Baron Rivendale was able to be used somewhere, which basically came down to the Sacrificial Pact Dreadsteed Warlock decks, which were kind of weird, but also sort of worked. So I wouldn't mind having the card in the game. I like the concept. I really do. I think it would be rarely played because there's just not many decks it would fit into, but it could find a place somewhere. Rally. 2 mana warrior spell. Add a random minion to your hand. Give it +2/+2. Okay, random minion. So it's like the Paladin Discover card, except you get one extra stat, but you don't get to choose a card. And it's very unlikely to give you a card like Tyrion or Ragnaros Lightlord, because Discover gives you extra chances to get the class cards. Probably not super great. What's the average minion like? Probably like a 4/4 or something like that. So 2 mana, add a 6/6 to your hand. It doesn't seem great. I mean, you could argue, well, the card you'll get, it's going to have a reduced mana cost for the stats. So it's kind of like replacing one of the cards with a random card in your deck, and having a delayed Mark of Nature on it, or a delayed, whatever the Beast Druid card is that gives +2/+2. It's not a bad concept, but I don't think it would really be a thing. Just, in most cases, you'd rather just put the good minion in your deck to begin with. Like, Dragon Warrior, for instance. Why wouldn't you just put a Blackwing Corruptor in your deck, than trying to randomly draw into a card that's like a Blackwing Corruptor? Because, let's just say you got a vanilla 4/4 for 4 mana. The Blackwing Corruptor still might be better, even if it's a 4 mana 6/6, because the Blackwing Corruptor gets that Battlecry effect that plays around you having a dragon deck. Deal 3 damage and then have a 5/4 for 5 mana. So, yeah, I just don't think random minions are that good. Okay, Scavenge. Hunter's Secret, 2 mana. Whenever one of your minions dies, draw 2 cards. That seems really, really good. So that's like an Arcane Intellect that is probably going to trigger, because everybody has to clear the Hunter's minions or else Hunter will eventually kill you. So this is 90% guaranteed to trigger, unless for whatever reason your opponent's just going to ignore the Hunter and go face, but yeah, like that's going to happen. So in that case, it's a 2 mana draw 2, which Arcane Intellect is already always played as a 3 mana draw 2 for mages. So yeah, giving Hunters a draw mechanic that costs 2 mana, that's even better. So this would be played in probably just about every Hunter deck. Would definitely be good in like Yogg-N-Load or something like that. That probably isn't a thing anymore though, since Yogg-Saron got nerfed. But yeah, Insane Secret, probably too powerful, honestly. If it was 3 mana, it would still potentially be good. Next, Shield Holder. 1 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, gain 3 armor. So, it's kind of like a Voodoo Doctor that is warrior only and gives you armor, can't be used to heal minions. Armor, of course, being a little better for warriors, because things like Shield Slam, very relevant. But it's a 1 mana minion. Would you play this? I think you probably would play this in a warrior, even if it was a control warrior, because you can use it for early trades. Helps filter those turns where you don't have a Fiery War Axe, or those games. And helps to stabilize the early game a little bit. Like, you play this, they play, I don't know, like Fiery Bat. This trades for the Fiery Bat. You're still up 2 armor. I'd say that's pretty decent. So yeah, nice card. Probably good enough to play in control even. Okay, next up, Silk Weaver, 1 mana priest minion, Battlecry and Deathrattle, silence a random enemy minion. Now, I do think if there's a class that, you know, is going to be silence-based, it's probably priest. They have all their crappy silence cards, Mass Dispel, Purify, Silence, which is less terrible. And this would mean Silk Weaver too. Note that it's a beast, so you could draw it with like a Curator type deck, which I'd probably try for sure. You could also bring it back with Resurrect as a silence effect, and that might not even be terrible. Probably not that good, but it's worth noting. So, silence on the Battlecry. In a lot of cases, like, your opponent plays Sylvanas, they've only got 1 minion. So this is like a 0 mana silence with a bad body that also has the potential to get a double silence. But the problem is it is random, so it's like almost enough to be played. I don't know if it's really good. Would require some testing, maybe in like a Reno Priest, Reno Curator, Silk Weaver Priest, something weird like that. The concept's not too bad. Yeah, I don't know if Blizzard would ever make a card like this though, because they wanted silence to take a real backseat with all the problems Ironbeak Owl was causing the game back in the day. But interesting. Okay, Spirit Missile, 1 mana shaman spell. Destroy a minion with Wind Fury, Charge, Divine Shield, Taunt, Divine Shield or Taunt, Overload 2. So it's really like a 3 mana removal. It's a little bit specific. For Control Shamans, that's really good because Control Shaman basically you have Hex and not a lot of other answers to really big creatures. So let's see, what do people play that has... note that it doesn't affect Deathrattle minions. So Taunt, Divine Shield, Charge, Wind Fury. I mean, you could play it against like a Cthulhu's Chosen for 2 for 4 mana, Divine Shield. Charge minions? Not really that many. Taunt? Yeah, it would be good against like a Bog Champ Shaman, but... You know, I don't actually know that this is a good spell just because there's... Like, Wind Fury and Charge, pretty much dead in the meta. I mean... Would Raging Worgen even count, even if Raging Worgen was played? I think it would only be if it was damaged. So you have like Kor'kron Elites, which are charges, but not being played too much because everybody's playing Control. So it's basically Taunt minions and that's it. And Black Knight, I would probably just play Black Knight over this, and no one's playing Black Knight right now. So it could be good, definitely, but not really in the current meta. Maybe when the new set rolls around and cards like Wind Fury or Charge are more of a thing. But yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, interesting concept though. I don't think it's bad in itself. Okay, 2 mana Rogue Legendary. 2 mana, 2/1. Vanessa Van Cleef. Battlecry, add a random legendary class card to your hand from your opponent's class. So that's a very specific card draw. There's, assuming you're playing Standard, there's only going to be about 3 legendaries that are playable. Let's say you're going up against a mage or a warrior or something like that. It's like 2 mana, add Archmage Antonidas to your rogue hand. 2 mana, add Grimoire Hellscream or Malkorok to your hand, or Tyrian Forge Ring. Any of those results, the class legendaries tend to be really good. So like with any of those results, it's like 2 mana, 2/1, add a really good card to your hand for free. Because it's not part of your deck, it's added to your hand, and you could play it with Ethereal Pillager to get an extra discount. Maybe play like Grimoire on turn 6 or something. If this was a card, it would be pretty crazy good. Though, you know, most legendaries, class legendaries are pretty crazy good. Like Van Cleef being able to make like a 8/8 for 3 mana or something like that. Or Tyrian, where you get the Divine Shield, the Taunt, and the weapon. By the way, Spirit Missile would be really good at killing Tyrian Forge Ring. Worth noting. Yeah, this would just be really good. Probably okay for the game, because Control Rogue isn't really that strong yet, and it would probably need something really good to make it better. Overall, I like the concept. Not sure if it would ever happen, though, but nice concept. Okay, so that's the cards from Danny. Thanks for sending those in. Pretty sweet. And overall, not too crazily imbalanced, though. Control Sequence and Kil Jaeden kind of out there. Control Sequence might be imbalanced. Kil Jaeden's just, I don't know. It's either really bad or really good. Okay, next up, NiklasJensen's cards. So it looks like we've got 5 here. They were sent to me a while ago. Yeah, that's a really high mana curve for these cards. So let's take a look at these. First off, to Mush Power. 15 mana, deal 30 damage. Okay, well, for one thing, that's pretty much unplayable. You could say like Emperor Tharzan or something like that. Not sure if it was supposed to be a serious card. But hypothetically, let's just assume. That looks like a priest spell? Or something like that? If it was like in a druid deck... No, you couldn't even innovate it out. But theoretically, let's assume that there was a way to get it to trigger. It would be far too situational in actually being able to get it to be played. And instantly killing any opponent that isn't a warrior is probably bad card design, so probably not the best idea for a card like that. Isengard Bomb, 10 mana, 10/1. Deathrattle, deal 10 damage to yourself. So it's basically a Pyroblast that's also going to deal 10 to yourself. So it's like a really bad Pyroblast. I don't know if there's any kind of weapon synergy that would make that better, but Yeah, probably okay if it's like the end of the game and it's just deal 10, take 10, then it's fine. But would probably not get played, even in a warrior deck. Melkor, 10 mana Battlecry and Deathrattle, 10 mana, 10/10. Put a Curse of Melkor into your opponent's deck. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Curse of Melkor. When drawn, you take 10 damage and draw a card. So basically, it's bringing back Iron Juggernaut from Warrior, except it puts 2 copies of it in your opponent's deck. But that said, if you were going to play a 10 mana minion, you always play it for the effect, not the stat line. So, to get Iron Juggernaut's effect twice on 10 mana is probably not good enough, honestly. Maybe if it was like 3 copies, that might be more playable. Or maybe I'm underestimating it. Maybe 2 copies to deal 20 damage over the course of the game is good enough. Like, you could play that in a fatigue deck, and sooner or later they're just going to take 20 extra damage. And that's pretty relevant. I mean, you could compare that to Alexstrasza. 9 mana, 8/8, deal up to 15 damage, where Melkor would be guaranteed 20 damage. So maybe I'm underestimating it. And Gilligan, the black, 16 mana, 15/15 dragon. At the start of your turn, reduce this card's cost by 1. Okay, so let's assume you had it in your opening hand, and you probably get to about, well, let's just say turn 15. 20 to 25 cards into the deck, and this becomes a 0 mana 15/15. Then I guess a 0 mana 15/15 would be pretty good. More realistically, you draw it on turn 5 or 6. You bring it into the late game, and then it's a 5 or 6 mana 15/15. Which would be pretty good. That would be really good, honestly. Because Arcane Giants and Mountain Giants kind of play on that same principle of getting cheaper based on certain conditions. Not only that, but it fits into Dragon decks. The downside is, though, if you do draw in the last 10 cards of your deck, it basically becomes really bad, because then it's like a 10 mana 15/15 at best, which is, it's hard to play. A 10 mana 15/15 isn't even that good, because when you're playing those 10 mana cards, you're hoping for a crazy effect like Deathwing, destroy the whole board, or Deathwing Dragonlord. When it gets destroyed, bring your whole hand of dragons into the field, or your Sarah at 9 mana to generate extra cards. A 15/15 for 10 mana just gets sniped with removal, so it's not really that great. Overall, this card would be probably on the strong side. Would it be bad for the game? Not necessarily, but I mean, those numbers are really wild. It's either going to be really bad for you, or it's going to be really good for you, and it depends on if you draw it in the right turns, because you don't want it on turn 1 either, because of course it would be an unplayable card for 14 or 15 turns. But I could see a card that was similar to this being played in a control dragon deck, maybe Paladin, maybe Warrior, something like that. So that's going to be it for the cards from NiklasJensen. Let's get into ORipperO's new cards. Starting with Altea. 5 mana, 3/5. Your beasts and dragons have charge. Okay, so that's basically like a Tundra Rhino with 1 extra attack, and also affects dragons. So, in Druid, it's almost a thing to play dragons, beasts, and Curator. Some people have kind of mixed those together. You just play Curator as a draw 2, and you ignore the Murlocs, my understanding. Or maybe you have the 1 mana discover a new hero power Murloc, and then those are your Curator cards. So this would be pretty good in a Druid deck like that. And it's basically just a better Tundra Rhino. I mean, 1 extra attack and the ability to affect dragons. You could say, hey, the Beast Hunter basically plays only beasts, so it wouldn't even be relevant if it gave dragons charge as well. But I think that this card could be a little bit more of a thing inside of Druid anyway, because you have cards like Innovate and Wild Growth to get those cheesy combo turns going. So, to have like an Altea stick to the board as a druid, probably easier than having a Tundra Rhino stick to the board as a hunter. So this card could be potentially really, really strong. Could also just be potentially kind of okay. If we're saying it's kind of like slightly above a Tundra Rhino, then it's a playable card, it's an option, but you would definitely have to build a deck around it. So, maybe it would be alright in the meta. Who knows? Murloc Bomb. 3 mana, 1/1. Murloc? Deathrattle, deal 2 damage to all non-Murlocs and non-demon minions. Okay. So basically, it's a Cold Light Seer, or Corrupted Seer, that has basically no stats, because it's just for the damage, and needs a trigger like Elven Archer or a Mortal Coil to trigger. More often than not, you would probably use Mortal Coil on this. In most decks, most Reno decks, you would just say, why not just play Demon Wrath? And that would be totally justified. In most Warlock decks, you would just play Demon Wrath over this. But I think if you're doing a Murloc-specific deck, then this may make a lot more sense. You play Murlocs and Demons, and then this card hits the board. It can't affect your own minions. So it basically just becomes well, they have to figure out how to deal with it, or you're just going to deal 2 damage on your own terms to their entire board. And that could be pretty crazy. A card like this could create some weird kind of zoo deck that's Murloc-based. I don't know if it's good enough alone to make Murloc Demon Zoo good, but I like the concept, actually. It's not good for control decks, but it's good for a board-centric Murloc Demon deck. Very interesting. Okay, 7 mana, Sarukhan the Noble. Battlecry, discover a demon, transform a minion into that demon. I'm assuming that's what it means to say. So you don't add the card to your hand, right? You just discover a minion. You discover a demon, and a minion becomes that demon. So there's 2 ways to play this. One is you turn one of your minions into something huge like Jiraxxus, where 7 mana, 6/6, transform a minion into Jiraxxus is really good. Or you give them like a Blood Imp or something like that and use it as basically a removal. Kind of in the same vein that Tinkerer's what's his name? The 3/3 minion gnome Tinkerer or something like that, who transforms a minion into a 1/1 squirrel or a 5/5 Devilsaur. It's like that. I assume that you get to choose the transform a minion after you've picked the demon. Yeah, because that would be a huge nerf if it wasn't like that. So yeah, that's the way it makes sense. Overall, assuming that this card works like I think it does, where you pick the demon and then pick the target, this card is probably top tier, at least as good as a card like Archmage Antonidas. Maybe even better than Tyrian Forging. I think it's just too strong. Honestly, for this card to be more balanced, you'd probably have to say, choose a minion, then discover a demon, and then transform it into that demon regardless. So that sometimes it kind of screws you over, you don't really gain anything, and you have to actually make it a risk to transform an enemy minion into something. That, or transform a random minion on the field that isn't Sarkhan into the discovered demon. Yeah, something like that to balance it. Because basically, discover, pick a Blood Imp and make your opponent's minion worthless, or a Jiraxxus and make your minion amazing, is just really good. And you're going to get something in between there with your discover. Remember, there's only so many demons in the game, too, so you're super likely to get a card like Jiraxxus or Blood Imp. Okay, moving on. Bad Manas, 3 mana Rogue, looks like. Deal 4 damage to a damaged character. Okay, so it's kind of like an Execute. Or more like a reverse Shadow Strike. So Shadow Strike was 3 mana, deal 5 damage to an undamaged character. That's fine. Now that card was pretty good, but it does have the limitation. Undamaged characters, sometimes it can't hit every target. Now, Bad Manners, I think where this card becomes really useful is in the Miracle Rogue or Malygos Rogue decks, where, of course, your opponent's going to be damaged. So you can use this as 3 mana, deal 4 damage. Combine that with a Malygos, it's like 3 mana, deal 9 damage. You probably Tharzan it down, or you can play it with Gadget Sand Auctioneer for extra card draw. Maybe you prep Bad Manners, Gadget Sand Auctioneer. Or, well, Gadget Sand Auctioneer first. And then that could be pretty good. I think this would just be a really solid rogue spell, and giving extra damage spells to rogues would make decks like Malygos Rogue probably better. 3 mana, 4 damage, that's not bad. That's like a Shadow Bolt that can be used on your opponent's hero too. And spells that deal damage probably a little better in Rogue than Warlock, because Rogues always have those spell damage cards, the Azure Drakes and the Blood Mage Thalnos, and if you're playing Malygos, then Malygos. Or Barnes Malygos even. So yeah, solid spell. It's not that it's broken in and of itself, but it would be curious whether this would push Rogue over the edge of being too strong in a Malygos deck. But playtesting would tell. So Cursed Domain, 3 mana, discover a demon from your deck. Interesting. So, most control Warlock decks are only going to be playing, let's say, 2 or 3 minions. So you could say, 3 mana Cursed Domain, copy Jiraxxus and add it to your hand. 3 mana draw Jiraxxus, and it's not really drawing because it doesn't come from your deck, it's out of nowhere. So it's like, add a Jiraxxus to your deck and immediately draw it. Would there be any other demons that you'd really want to discover? Maybe you could play this with a Zoo deck, and you just get the Doom Guard for 3 mana, and you play it on turn 8. You draw Cursed Domain, you get Doom Guard, you play it, and then maybe you draw into more Doom Guards as it goes on. Yeah, in most cases, you'll be able to get exactly the card you're looking for, so this could actually be a pretty good card. I do like the concept a lot. I think the closest thing to compare it to would be like a Farsight or something like that, where you might be getting the cards you really need in the future turns, but getting them now. And maybe it's really good in control matchups too, because you can get like 2 copies of Lord Jiraxxus, or 2 copies of whatever other big demons you may be playing. Maybe Illidan Stormrage, just maybe. Cool card, I do like it. Okay, 4 mana Corrupted Tiger. 3/3 Beast Warlock. Deathrattle, summon 2 worthless imps. So it's basically the Hunter card made for Warlocks. Does give you demons on the Deathrattle. Maybe relevant, maybe not. And it's a beast, so you could play it in a Curator deck. You could obviously play it in a Zoo-like deck, and it would be pretty good for that, because you have lots of targets for things like Abusive Sergeant. Honestly, I'm not really sure what happened to Zoo, because Abusive Sergeant got nerfed, and it seemed like every Warlock deck since then that I've played has been Arena Lock. But maybe this could be like this could probably fit into Arena Lock deck too, because it's pretty sticky, and overall it's got a lot of stats. And it could be drawn with Curator, that's really good. So there's possibilities there. Could be a Zoo card, could be a Arena Lock card, could be a Curator Arena Lock card. I like it. I think Hunters would be pretty salty if Warlocks got this, but then again, Hunters have always kind of destroyed Warlocks too, because, well, Warlock's hero power. But, yeah. Okay. Aether Manipulator, 6 mana, 5/5, Battlecry. The next spell you cast heals your hero for its mana cost. Okay, so that's like paying 5 mana for a bad 5 drop, and then paying 1 more mana for a healing effect. So, I would compare this to Darkscale Healer, which is a card from Classic, the basic set. 5 mana for 5, heal all of your friendly targets for 2 mana. 2 health. And that's basically a Yeti plus 1 more mana. If this was a 5 mana card... or what am I trying to say? If you would try to say, well, compare this to the 5 mana Yetis, you would be saying like, well, compare this to a Pit Fighter, which is a 5/6. And having 1 less HP is kind of a big deal. I think 5/6 is way better of a stat line than 5/5. And you could say the Darkscale Healer, well, it's still got a 4/5 stat line, and that's pretty good. But a 5/5 stat line for 6 mana is kind of on the weak side. So you're getting slightly less value in terms of stats, and then you're paying 1 mana that only works on your hero. It doesn't heal your friendly allied minions, so you don't gain tempo like that. You could say, well, you're playing this in a freeze mage or something like that, and then maybe, maybe that makes sense. Because it's like 6 mana 5/5, and then on the back of that you Pyroblast and heal for 10, or something like that, or you maybe you Flame Strike, or what's the other card called? Firelands Portal. On turn 7, heal for 7. And, then it's not too bad. So if you're playing a control mage and you're trying to stave off that ice block pop turn one more turn, like a Reno mage or something like that, I could see this being played. Like, you play Blizzard, you play Firelands Portal, you play Flame Strike, or even you play Fire Blast and you heal for a good amount, almost like a heal bot. And it's not too bad. It's not too bad in a control decks. You probably wouldn't play it in a Freeze Mage deck, like a classic Freeze Mage deck, though, because that's all about drawing into the damage, using Ice Block to stave off a few more turns, and then just nuking your opponent's face. I don't think you could fit this card into that deck, because it's just going to clog up your hand. You'll have the Ice Blocks guarding you anyway, so you don't really need to worry about healing so much as you do drawing the combo that ends your opponent off. But in a Reno Mage, I would try to play it. At least see if it works or not. Okay, so it looks like we've gotten to the end there. So that's going to be it for today's card review. Thanks Danny, NiklasJensen, and ORipperO for sending me these cards to review. I'll put my email in the description if you want to email me your own cards for me to review. And I don't know, we'll keep this going for a little while longer, I guess. But I've been Dark Skeleton. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you in my future content.